There is this almost universal trap that we all fall into at some point,
Oh, absolutely.
and it is so incredibly sneaky that you probably don't even realize you're stuck in it.
Most people don't until it's pointed out.
Right. It's this idea that your life is essentially a series of waiting rooms. You're sitting there, thumbing through a metaphorical magazine, just waiting for that one big moment to finally call your name.
Like waiting for your number at the DMV, but for your life.
Exactly.
Mm.
Maybe it's the promotion at work, or maybe it's hitting a very specific number in your retirement account.
Or finally moving to that perfect city.
Yes. And you think to yourself, like, okay, once I get over that hurdle, then my life actually begins.
Then I can finally relax.
Right, then I can be happy.
The psychology world actually has a term for this phenomenon. It's called the arrival fallacy.
Arrival fallacy. I love that term.
Yeah, it is this deeply ingrained, almost biological illusion that success is a literal finish line. We convince ourselves that if we can just cross that specific threshold.
Everything is just going to magically click into place.
Exactly. We assume our daily underlying stress will just vanish, our insecurities will completely evaporate, and we will finally transform into this fulfilled, actualized person we've always imagined we are meant to be.
But that's not how human biology works, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
The reality of human neurochemistry is that once you hit that goal, the dopamine spike fades remarkably fast.
Wow. So
You're left standing there looking around for the next finish line.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. We are looking at a really powerful philosophical essay titled, Live as Your Best Future Self Today.
It's a fantastic piece of writing.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle that arrival fallacy we just talked about. We want to deconstruct this universal trap.
Right.
So if you are listening to us right now, whether you're prepping for a high-stakes meeting later this afternoon, or you're driving home in traffic, or, just trying to survive what has been a really exhausting week, this conversation is fundamentally about reclaiming agency over your own life.
That's a great way to frame it.
We're going to use this source text to give you a practical blueprint for reverse engineering your success, starting right now.
And what makes this essay such a compelling focal point is that it aggressively challenges our standard perception of the timeline of success.
Oh, so?
Well, the author argues that lasting success doesn't start when you achieve a goal or hit a milestone. It begins long before those achievements ever materialize in the real world.
Right, it's not a sudden event.
Exactly. The premise here is that destiny is not a grand, sweeping, cinematic event that happens to you. Destiny is a microscopic, daily biological and psychological pipeline.
Okay, let's unpack that pipeline, because the text explicitly maps out a very specific chain reaction for how reality is built.
Right, the thoughts to destiny pipeline.
Right, it says, your thoughts shape your emotions influence your decisions, and your decisions determine your destiny.
It's a very clear progression.
It sounds elegant, really poetic, but I want to break down how that actually functions on a Tuesday afternoon when you're just incredibly stressed.
Well, the mechanics of that pipeline are really about the shift from a reactive state to a proactive state. Let's look at how a single thought actually becomes a destiny.
Okay, take me through it.
A thought is essentially just an electrical impulse in your brain. When you choose a thought that is disciplined and purposeful, your brain releases neurotransmitters that generate a corresponding emotional state, perhaps calm or focus.
Okay, so the thought physically changes your brain chemistry.
Exactly. And that emotional state then acts as the lens through which you view your immediate environment. Because your nervous system is regulated, your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical forward planning part of your brain, it stays online.
Which means you can actually think clearly.
Right. And that dictates the quality of the choice you make in the next 5 minutes. Over time, those choices compound.
I love thinking about it like compound interest in a bank account.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, it's like you make these tiny $5 daily deposits. Nobody is throwing a parade for a $5 deposit.
Right, you barely even notice it leaving your checking account.
Exactly. But you do that every single day, and decades later, you suddenly have a fortune. The text emphasizes that success is rarely the outcome of one big viral moment, right? It's the result of countless small, meaningful decisions.
Absolutely.
But I do have to push back here for a second, because this is where a lot of philosophical essays kind of lose me.
Okay, where's the friction?
Well, it is incredibly easy to read an article that says, just choose positive thinking. But What happens when you're just having an absolutely terrible, no-good day?
Right.
Let's say your tire blows out on the highway in the pouring rain. Telling yourself to, think positive in that moment just feels absurd. How do small, seemingly insignificant daily decisions actually overpower a deeply justified bad mood?
That friction point is where the rubber meets the road, pun intended. And the essay is very careful to distinguish between toxic positivity and disciplined thinking.
Okay, so it's not about forcing a smile.
No, not at all. The text isn't asking you to pretend that the blown tire is a wonderful blessing. It's highlighting the cognitive mechanism of decoupling an event from your emotional reaction.
Decoupling the event.
Right. When the tire blows, your default setting is reactive. Your amygdala sounds the alarm, cortisol floods your system, and your emotions basically hijack your executive function.
So you're in full fight or flight mode.
Exactly. And your next decision is usually poor. Maybe you scream at the tow truck driver, or you go home and aggressively snap at your family, which completely ruins the evening.
I've definitely been there.
We all have. The discipline the text advocates for is the mental pause to think, this is a frustrating setback, but it does not dictate my next action. That specific thought regulates the negative emotion just enough to prevent the bad decision. It's about overriding the immediate impulse so you don't derail that compound interest you just mentioned.
Wow. Okay. So if small, proactive actions are the daily deposits building our future, and we understand the mechanism of pausing to regulate our emotions, why aren't we all just doing that constantly?
That's the million-dollar question.
The source points to one very specific culprit that derails this entire process. Hesitation. We freeze up. We wait.
We wait because we are fundamentally conditioned to believe that confidence is a prerequisite for action.
Wait, say that again. Confidence is a prerequisite.
That's what we believe, yes. We wait for the perfect circumstances to align before we start the business or before we apply for the leadership role or, before we initiate that really difficult conversation with a partner.
We want to feel ready.
Exactly. But the author identifies this as a critical misunderstanding of human psychology.
Yeah, the text says instead of waiting for confidence to appear, act with courage. This feels like a huge distinction.
The distinction between confidence and courage is arguably the most vital insight in this entire piece.
Yes.
Well, confidence is an outcome. It is the psychological byproduct of having done something successfully in the past. You literally cannot possess confidence before you attempt something new because your brain has zero evidence that you can survive it.
Right. You haven't done it yet.
Exactly. Courage, on the other hand, is the willingness to act in the complete absence of confidence. It is the neurological override of your fear center.
I picture it like standing on the edge of a high dive.
Oh, that's a good visual.
Yeah, you're shivering, looking down at the water, and you are just waiting to feel ready to jump. But you're never going to feel ready. At some point, you just have to accept that you aren't ready, but you jump anyway.
Yes. The author is urging the reader to make the best use of the present moment, rather than waiting for an idealized future moment where you feel completely safe. Because honestly, that moment simply does not exist.
Wait, I need to challenge this a bit, because acting without confidence sounds a little bit like a recipe for disaster.
How do you mean?
Well, if I decide to launch a business without a solid plan, or if I jump into a massive financial investment just to prove I have courage, I could ruin my life. How does the author reconcile this idea of acting courageously with just being reckless or irresponsible?
That's a really important nuance. The author isn't advocating for ignoring risk or abandoning preparation. The argument is about our relationship to imperfect conditions.
Okay.
Recklessness is acting without regard for reality. Courage, as defined in this essay, is acting while fully acknowledging that reality is imperfect and proceeding anyway.
So it's about not letting the imperfections stop you.
Right. What's fascinating here is how the text radically reframes how we view difficult, unpolished situations. It states that challenges do not define you. They reveal and build the strength of your character.
Okay, that makes sense.
Waiting for ideal conditions is a trap specifically because ideal conditions offer no friction. And without friction, there is zero growth.
Wow. So the obstacle isn't blocking the path, the obstacle is the path. It's like you need the heavyweights in the gym to tear the muscle fiber so it can actually rebuild stronger.
Yes. The imperfect circumstances, the setbacks, the lack of funding, the steep learning curves, they are the very tools required to carve out your patience, your wisdom, your resilience, and your self-control.
They're mandatory.
Every challenge is a mandatory training session. If everything were easy and perfectly aligned from day one, You would never develop the internal fortitude that your future self is going to desperately rely on to sustain success.
Okay, that makes total sense. So you take the leap. You are acting with courage in the messy, imperfect present moment. But inevitably, because conditions aren't perfect, you are going to stumble.
You will definitely stumble.
You're going to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you look foolish to the outside world. Doesn't that public failure completely crush a person's momentum?
It can, if you're measuring it wrong.
Because we live in a society constantly conditioned to measure progress by looking sideways. Does my neighbor have a nicer car? Did my college roommate get a better title? Look at this influencer's vacation. If we are struggling through imperfect conditions, looking sideways is going to be incredibly demoralizing.
Which is exactly why the text demands a complete withdrawal from external validation.
A complete withdrawal.
Yes. Once you commit to acting with courage, you have to change your measurement metrics. The essay asserts that your greatest competition is not other people, but the person you were yesterday.
I picture it like running a marathon on an invisible track where you are the absolute only runner.
That's a great image.
Yeah, the only other person on the track is a ghost of your past self. And every day you're just trying to beat yesterday's time.
But notice the specific metrics the author uses for this inward competition.
Okay.
It isn't about out-earning the ghost of yesterday or gaining more followers than your past self.
Right.
The text focuses on continuous self-improvement, measured strictly by character traits.
Okay.
It asks, are you striving to become a little kinder, more disciplined, more honest, focused, and grateful?
It's totally internal.
It emphasizes living your values and practicing integrity, humility, compassion, and responsibility. And crucially, doing all of this when no one is watching, when there is zero external reward for doing the right thing.
You know, here is where it gets really interesting for me. Because we started this whole deep dive by talking about the arrival fallacy, waiting for the big promotion, the money, the tangible achievements.
Right.
But halfway through, the text totally pivots its definition of success. It says true success is measured by peace, purpose, and the positive impact you bring to others. It actively distances the concept of destiny from wealth or status.
Connecting this to the bigger picture, it lines perfectly with the biological and psychological pipeline we discussed in the first segment.
Oh, the thoughts to destiny pipeline.
Exactly. If your primary driver is wealth or status, your decisions are rooted in accumulation and competition. That neurochemical state naturally breeds anxiety, scarcity, and constant comparison.
So your nervous system is basically always on edge.
Always. But if your primary goal is peace and positive impact, your decisions are driven by integrity and contribution. That regulates the nervous system.
Wow, okay.
However, the text brings up a very strict requirement for achieving this state of peace. You have to deliberately let go of emotional burdens.
Yeah, it specifically mentions letting go of fear, self-doubt, negative thinking, and resentment, claiming these burdens prevent you from becoming who you are capable of being.
Right.
But let's be realistic about human nature here. Resentment usually feels completely justified.
Oh, absolutely it does.
When someone wrongs you, holding on to that anger feels like holding a shield. It feels protective. How does dropping that shield actually move us closer to this redefined idea of success?
Because the feeling of protection is an illusion. Resentment is essentially a massive cognitive tax.
A cognitive tax, like it drains your mental battery.
Exactly. Think about the sheer amount of mental and emotional bandwidth required to maintain a grudge. It keeps your brain tethered to the past, and worse, it keeps your emotional state tethered to someone else's actions.
So you're giving them control.
You are allowing someone who wronged you to dictate your present-day neurochemistry. The text frames personal growth as a lifelong journey, not a destination. You physically cannot process complex, future-oriented decisions when your prefrontal cortex is bogged down by the dead weight of past grievances.
That is so profound.
Replacing resentment with gratitude, optimism, self-belief, and a willingness to learn isn't just a nice moral idea. It is a practical strategy to free up the cognitive bandwidth you need to make the proactive choices we talked about earlier.
So when you are on this lifelong journey and you inevitably mess up because no one maintains perfect emotional regulation all the time, it's not a permanent stain on your record. Making a bad choice doesn't ruin the invisible track.
Not at all. The text is adamant that every mistake becomes a lesson, provided you choose growth over regret.
Growth over regrets.
Regret is a backward-looking emotion. It is obsessing over the unchangeable past, which, again, consumes cognitive bandwidth without offering any return on investment.
Right.
Growth is a forward-looking action. It involves extracting the raw data from the mistake, asking why the system failed, and applying that data to the very next decision.
So we have a pretty robust framework here. We understand the pipeline from thoughts to destiny. We know we have to substitute courage for confidence.
Yes.
We are running on an invisible track competing only with our past selves, and we are systematically freeing up cognitive bandwidth by dropping resentment.
That's a lot to take in.
It is a massive undertaking. How on earth does someone listening to this right now actually maintain this lifestyle day after day, year after year, without just completely burning out?
Well, the author provides a very grounding, practical framework for holistic maintenance.
Okay, what does that look like?
The philosophy requires active, intentional care of your mind, body, and spirit. It discusses maintaining healthy physical habits and managing time wisely, which are, foundational.
Yeah.
But the most striking mechanism for preventing burnout is the concept of a nightly audit.
Ah, the daily evening reflection.
Yes.
The text asks you to sit down every single night and ask yourself one specific question. Did my choices today bring me closer to the person I want to become?
It's such a simple question, but it's incredibly powerful.
I look at that question like calibrating a compass at the end of a really long, exhausting hike in the wilderness. You set up camp, pull out your map, and just double-check your bearing.
That's a great analogy.
Because, drifting 3 degrees off course doesn't seem like much on a Monday morning. You barely notice it. But if you keep walking 3 degrees off course, by Friday afternoon, you are in an entirely different forest.
The compass metaphor captures the utility perfectly. It is a daily course correction mechanism. The human brain is prone to drift. We get distracted by immediate stimuli and lose sight of our long-term values.
Right, the latest email, the social media notification.
Exactly. The nightly audit prevents you from drifting so far away from your character goals that you forget how to navigate back.
Let's put this into practice for the listener right now.
Okay.
Let's say they get to bed tonight. They are staring at the ceiling. They ask themselves that compass question, and the honest answer is a hard, depressing no.
It happens.
My choices today did not bring me closer to who I want to be. I skipped my workout, I ate terrible food, I procrastinated on a major project, and I was short-tempered with my kids. Facing that reality can be brutal.
Extremely brutal.
So, how does the listener avoid spiraling into a pit of guilt and self-loathing? Because that would just trigger more bad decisions tomorrow.
This is where the profound empathy of the source material really shines through.
Yeah.
The text anticipates this exact scenario of failure, because failure is a feature of the human condition, not a bug. The essay offers a very specific, reassuring promise for the nights when the answer is no.
And what's the promise?
The promise is that tomorrow is a fresh opportunity to improve.
Tomorrow is a completely clean slate.
A no during your nightly audit is not an indictment of your character. It is simply data.
Just raw data.
Exactly. It ties directly back to the concept of extracting lessons rather than wallowing in regret. Guilt and self-loathing are reactive emotions that keep you stuck.
Right, they drain the battery.
Acknowledging a misstep, analyzing the friction point that caused it without judgment, and resolving to implement a better choice tomorrow, that is the very definition of proactive growth. The audit is designed to inspire, not punish.
It completely reframes how we experience time and failure. You aren't punishing yourself for yesterday's missteps. You are just gathering intel to prepare yourself for tomorrow.
Precisely.
This entire deep dive has been such an incredible paradigm shift regarding how we build a life. I want to read the closing quote from the essay because it perfectly synthesizes the mechanics and the philosophy we've been unpacking.
Please do.
The author writes, "Don't wait for a better future to change your life. Become the person your future requires today. Your habits shape your character shapes your destiny, and your destiny begins with the choices you make right now."
That is the ultimate realization this text wants to impart. Your future self isn't a stranger waiting for you at some mythical finish line years from now.
No more waiting rooms.
Right. They aren't magically manifesting out of thin air the moment you get a promotion or buy your dream house. Your future self is being stitched together right now by the tiny, seemingly invisible decisions you are making this very afternoon.
The arrival fallacy is officially dead. The wait is over because the real work is happening right now.
Right now.
Which leads me to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. If your ideal future self could travel back in time to this exact second right now as you finish listening to this deep dive, what is the very next tiny, ordinary decision they would beg you to make?